The stadium roared for everyone else's children, but the billionaire in the back row had no one to cheer with, just an empty chair and a tight smile. Then a single mom touched it. "Can we sit next to you?" The marching band's brassy cheer ricocheted off aluminum bleachers and summer blue sky. Parents waved hand-painted signs. Someone near the concession rail yelled, "That's my baby," and set the row laughing. In the last section beneath the shadow of the scoreboard, so far from the stage that the podium looked like a toy, Ethan Mercer sat with his hands folded, a program balanced on one knee and an empty chair holding its breath beside him. He had refused the dais. PR had tried to insist, "Your scholarship cohort is walking, Mr. Mercer. Optics are everything," but he'd declined, quietly stubborn. He wanted to be here as a person, not a headline. He wore a plain navy cap pulled low and a charcoal jacket that made him look like any middle-aged man trying to be anonymous. His phone face down on the bench vibrated once, then again, insistent as a heartbeat he was ignoring. Ethan angled the program to catch the light. So many names. Printed nerves and triumph in black ink. He skimmed until his gaze snagged on the M's, then the P's. His fingers stopped over Paige Mercer, Bachelor of Arts, Sociology. There it was, anchor and storm. He traced the letters like a hesitation, all that pride bound up with ache. He had typed a message to her 3 times that morning, and each time he deleted it, leaving only the quiet accusation of an empty screen. He picked up the phone, typed again. "I'm sitting in the stands, section 327. If you want to see me after, I'll wait." He stared at it until the words blurred. The send button glowed like a dare. He locked the screen, jaw tight. The band launched into pomp and circumstance, and a river of black robes began to snake along the edge of the field. A wave of cheering rolled up from the lower bowls. His chest rose against some invisible strap. He pressed his thumb beneath his wedding ring tan line, a habit that had outlasted the ring itself. Out past the third base line, the graduates fanned across the grass, a colony of mortarboards with tassels flickering like a stand of wheat. One of them might be Paige, his girl who used to leap into pools without counting and laugh like light. One of them might turn her face and he'd know. His assistant called. He let it go to voicemail. Then he saw a text from PR, media on site. "If anyone recognizes you, we can move you to VIP." He flipped the phone face down again. Have you ever had that one message you couldn't bring yourself to send, even though it might change everything? Would you hit send or wait? Share your take in the comments. I'm curious how you'd handle it. In a one-bedroom apartment across town where the water heater groaned like an old man and sunlight pooled on the kitchen linoleum, Maya Reyes was wrestling ribbon around a bouquet of supermarket lilies. The ribbon kept slipping. Her 9-year-old, Sophie, sat on the counter and mangled a safety pin into a sine wave. "Not too tight," Maya said, half breathless, half laughing. "We want beautiful, not strangled." "Like when we do my hair for ballet," Sophie said solemnly, then grinned. "Not too tight." Maya bit the end of the ribbon and tied it into a bow that would have to do. The lilies smelled fresh-cut and sharp, green and sweet like hope. Her big boy Mateo, had left hours ago with his tassel clamped in his teeth and a ribcage full of nerves. "Save me a seat with a good view," he'd said, a joke and a wish. She'd texted back a dozen red hearts and a selfie of her with bedhead and coffee-stained pajama pants. On it, mi amor. Now the clock on the stove flipped from 10:09 to 10:10 with indifferent calm. "Bus or ride?" Sophie asked, squinting at her mother like a small judge. "Bus," Maya said, already shrugging into her cardigan. "We're eco-friendly warriors with no gas money." Sophie giggled, jumped down, grabbed the bouquet with both hands. The lilies drooped, Maya winced and adjusted. A paper gift bag, its tissue stuffed like clouds, waited by the door. Inside was the watch Mateo had asked for in her, a hem. Financial acrobatics had made barely possible. She set the bag on her forearm, snapped off the kitchen light with her elbow, and herded Sophie into the hallway like a shepherd guiding the world's most distractible lamb. On the bus, the air was a stew of old perfume and yesterday's rain. An older man in a green polo tried to make the driver laugh and partially succeeded. Maya pressed her palm to the bouquet's stems, feeling their cool promise. Sophie leaned into her and whispered, "Do you think he'll cry?" "Him. You're macho, man. He'll hold it in with his eyebrows." "What about you?" Maya snorted softly. "I will be stone. Like Mount Rushmore. Only brown." Sophie's eyes twinkled. "You cry at cereal commercials." "Only the ones with puppies," Maya whispered back. "And scholarships." Her mind slipped, as it did too often, into the math of living. Rent next week. Health insurance premium still in the red. The child support that sometimes appeared like a comet and sometimes didn't. The bus grated over a pothole, and she stilled the spin with an old trick. Look at something you can name. Row of elms past the window. Woman with leopard print scarf. Little boy pressing his face to the glass, leaving a glowing oval of breath. The bouquet's ribbon tugging a lily petal like a kite tail. They missed one light, then made two. Time climbed her back and sat there heavy. By the time they clattered down at the stadium stop, a river of families had already begun to pour through the gates. A woman in a red dress brushed past them, perfume like cherries. A man balanced a toddler on his shoulders, the toddler squealing with the kind of joy that splits you open if you're not careful. Hand, Maya said automatically, and Sophie's small fingers threaded into hers. The heat of the day was just beginning to gather itself. The concrete smelled toasted. Vendors hawked water bottles with the same urgency as prophets. Somewhere, the band rehearsed a march that made her think of Mateo marching through their apartment at age 6 with a broom as a flag. Inside, it was a city of metal benches and shouting. This way, Maya said, because it felt better to act than admit she had no idea where to go. Sophie hopped with each step, the bouquet bobbing dangerously. They climbed and climbed and climbed, until the field below looked like a diorama and the air felt thinner. When they finally found a section with a sliver of open space, it turned out to be a mirage. 7 t-shirts fanned out to save seats, a handful of jackets tossed like territorial flags. A woman with a camera around her neck shook her head apologetically. Sorry, the whole row's taken. My cousins, my aunties, Your whole family tree, Maya finished, not unkindly, smile glued on. Congratulations. They tried another row. A teenager draped a leg over an empty spot and scrolled, as if he were guarding a kingdom. Any room? Maya asked. My mom's coming, he said without looking up. Of course she is, Maya murmured and tugged Sophie onward. Sweat beaded at the back of her knees. Hope thinned to a wire. Near the very rear, in the shadow that pooled under the scoreboard, she saw it. 2 aluminum seats side by side. One occupied by a man sitting with the posture of someone too practiced at not taking up space. The other unclaimed. He wore a cap pulled low. He was dressed nicer than most, jacket, crisp shirt. But something about the way he held himself made Maya think of photographs that never made it into frames. Alone but pretending not to be. Ma, Sophie whispered, tugging her sleeve. There's a seat. I see it. And she saw him. The line of his jaw, the way his fingers pressed and released against the program on his knee, steady as a metronome. He looked like a man trying not to count anything. Ethan clocked them before he allowed himself to look. Years of boardrooms and interviews had tuned him to people in his periphery. A woman in a thrift store sweater the color of tea, a child with braids and a smile that punched holes in your armor. The kid's shoes flashed tiny lights with every hop. He felt, for no good reason, his shoulders loosen. Then he saw the bouquet and felt a needle of recognition. The lily smell of hospital rooms and graduations, his own mother's kitchen. He shifted the program slightly to mask the empty chair. A reflex he swallowed even as it rose. What was he guarding? An illusion of solitude? Or the right to keep this morning intact, even if intact meant painfully quiet? Excuse me, someone said behind him, not the woman's voice but one row back. Are you? No, sorry, never mind. He kept his cap low, head angled, an old choreography. Non-recognition was the only retreat money had ever given him that actually worked. On the field, the procession curved and expanded, black robes Bermuda triangling into place. A camera crane swung, catching everything and nothing. The announcer's voice boomed, welcoming donors and distinguished guests. He ignored the prickle down his spine. To all the families who nurtured these graduates, the dean said, this is your day too. A raw cheer rose and then fell like a wave breaking. Sophie's fingers tightened. Can we try there? She asked, not quite whispering, bearing toward the empty seat like a magnet finds a nail. Maya hesitated. The man's clothing said money. His posture said don't. She had learned, through long practice, to read the rooms where she was told there was no room. Doctors' offices, HR waiting areas, financial aid lines. Some people said no with a smile. Others said no by daring you to ask. It was one of life's small violences, that some chairs were empty but not for you. She looked down at the bouquet, bent but brave. At Sophie, whose face was open as weather. At the field where 100 futures were aligning and her son was somewhere among them, scanning the stands for his mother's face. All they can say is no, she murmured to herself, and felt that stubborn part of her. The one that had carried laundry bags up 3 flights after a 12-hour shift and then read Harry Potter aloud with funny voices. Tilt her chin. Ethan took a breath he didn't know why he was holding. The empty chair beside him seemed to glow with invitation or indictment. He wondered what Paige would do if she were here. She would roll her eyes and say, "It's a chair, Dad. You're being weird." Then she'd shove him with her shoulder and laugh. The memory pulled something fierce and bright through him, so fast he had to blink it away. "Come on," Maya said, more to her courage than to Sophie. They moved up another step. The bouquet brushed her cheek, pollen dusting her skin like small suns. The man in the cap didn't look up, not quite, but his hand stilled on the program as if words could sense bodies nearby. Up close, the fabric of his jacket looked expensive enough that the threads had their own decisions. She almost smiled at the thought. "Be polite," she breathed, to herself and to the universe that sometimes recognized such contracts. Sophie, fearless in the way of 9-year-olds who believe in the goodness of a day, led the way down the row. Her sneaker lights winked. Maya followed with the careful gait of someone carrying both flowers and the day's last straw of luck. They reached the empty chair. Sophie looked longingly at it, then up at Maya. Maya set her palm on the cool back of the seat and felt the metal's stored shadow, cool and clean against her skin. The man angled his face toward them, and Maya saw his eyes at last, stone gray and unexpectedly unguarded, like a sky just before it breaks into rain. She opened her mouth. The band swelled. Somewhere, the dean was asking them to be seated. The bouquet's lilies inhaled sunlight. For a second, all the noise in the stadium braided itself into a single thread of silence stretched tight between strangers. Maya drew a breath steady enough to carry a small hope across a small distance, and leaned in. "Can we sit next to you?" It landed soft as a question and heavy as a key in a locked room. Up close, her voice had a husk of nerves, a good humor trying not to apologize for existing. Ethan looked at the chair, then at them. The girl's expectant tilt, the woman's careful dignity. His throat tightened around old habits. Keep space. Keep privacy. Keep control. He had built empires with no, and broken a few things that deserved yes. "Please," he said, standing before the word could rot. "Take it." He sidestepped, bracing a palm on the bench behind for balance, and held out a hand for the bouquet without thinking. The lilies breathed their wet, clean green right up into his face, a scent that felt like a door opening and the memory behind it being both welcome and too much. "Thank you," the woman said, relief loosening her shoulders. "She can sit on my lap. We know the art of squeezing." "I am very squishable," the girl announced, already climbing into the space as if it remembered her. Her sneakers flared tiny lights when they banged against the aluminum. "I'm Sophie." "Hi, Sophie," Ethan said, and felt himself smile in a way that wasn't for cameras. "I'm Ethan." He handed the bouquet back carefully, a lily petal brushing his knuckle and leaving a dust of yellow there like a blessing gone astray. "Maya," the woman added, sliding into the seat with the warp and weft of bodies giving way and making do. She drew Sophie onto her lap, wrapped an arm around her middle and the flowers both, as if her forearm could keep the day from tipping. Up close, her cardigan was pilled at the elbows and clean. Her hair was twisted up with a pencil and a mystery. There were laugh lines that hadn't had enough time lately to earn their keep. She had a face built for endurance and sudden laughter. On the field, the graduates formed squares, then lines, then sat in waves. A drone hummed overhead like a mechanical bee. The dean adjusted a microphone and boomed a welcome. The stadium stood for the anthem. Sophie hummed along off-key, exuberant. When they sat again, the metal hissed under the late morning sun. "Do you have someone down there?" Maya asked, tipping her chin toward the sea of caps. "My daughter," he said, too quick to hedge, then added softer, "Paige." "I love that name," she said, and meant it the way people mean something for 1 second before it becomes a fact they put down. "Mine's Mateo. He left at like sunrise. He said he was fine. He was not fine." The smile angled itself toward pride and worry like a compass needle trying to pick true north. "First one?" Ethan asked. "In the family?" Maya laughed, but her hand tightened around Sophie without meaning to. "First one, period. He made it happen." "It's a good thing," Ethan said, feeling the old ache expand a little. "Being the first. It changes the shape of everyone's house, even the rooms you can't see." Maya glanced at him, surprised into something warmer than courtesy. The stadium warred with itself, applause where there wasn't supposed to be applause yet, shushing like a tide that didn't want to scold anyone's joy. Sophie tucked a lily under her nose until her eyes crossed. "Do you need the program?" Ethan asked. He lifted his, the corner worn from being turned and turned. "We got it," Maya said, holding up a dog-eared one, the R's tabbed with a folded receipt. "But I keep losing my place." Ethan's mouth twitched. "It's like trying to find Waldo when everyone agreed to dress like Waldo." "Exactly," Maya said, delighted that the fancy jacket man understood tight, stupid jokes. "Also, my glasses are in their natural habitat, which is not with me. Here." He slid his program onto her knee, felt the brief brush of denim and the surprise of noticing it. "I circled mine. You can mark yours. It helps." Maya glanced down and saw the small, neat circle around Paige Mercer. The last name rung like a bell that didn't quite resolve into a song. She looked at his face, saw nothing like recognition there that she could place, only the carefulness of someone who had walled a fragile thing off and wasn't sure if today was earthquake-proof. She took a pen from behind her ear. Ah, so that's what the pencil was doing there, and made a small star next to Mateo Reyes. "There," she said. "Proof of existence." "Proof," he echoed. Then, after a beat, he added, "I like your star better. It feels certain." "The only thing I have a surplus of today is certainty," Maya said. "And lilies. Would you like one? You look like you could use something to hold." He huffed a quiet laugh. "I'm holding on to a lot. But sure." He plucked the smallest blossom from the bouquet, where it had already half broken from its stem, laid it on the program like a secret. Sophie leaned toward him, conspiratorial. "Are you famous?" "Sophie," Maya whispered, mortified and amused in the same breath. "It's okay," Ethan said, surprised at the absence of dread. "I'm famous to 3 people on a good day. One of them is me when I remember to eat lunch." "That jacket is expensive," Sophie persisted with the unerring radar of a kid who'd watched her mother count dollars in a checkout line. "So you must be someone." "MHM," Ethan said, letting the hum answer more than it did. "I'm someone's dad." Something in the way he said it, like a thing he was choosing instead of a thing he'd been named, made Maya look at him again. He didn't have a ring. He did have the tan line of one. He held his phone like it owed him nothing and too much. He kept glancing, not compulsively but like a man counting a breath between waves. "Me too," she said quietly. "Someone's mom. 2 someones. It's a full-time job with bad coffee." He smiled, then let it fade. "Worth it, though." "Always," Maya said. The dean began the usual speeches. The broad exhortations toward excellence, gratitude, change the world in shoes that won't give you blisters. It was easy to tune out, and impossible. When he mentioned those who sacrificed to get you here, Maya clapped first, loud enough that her palms stung. She cheered for a stranger's kid 2 sections over whose name sounded like a song, for a grandmother crying 3 rows down, for the young woman in a purple robe who fist-pumped each syllable of her own name like she'd been waiting her whole life to hear it said right. Ethan found himself clapping too, for nobody and everybody, for the rooms in his own house that had changed shape and the ones he'd shut off out of fear and pride and didn't know how. "Do you think he can see us?" Sophie asked, chin on the bench back, eyes wide as the whole field. "Yes," Maya said, with the certainty she'd promised. "He knows we're here." "That's a good trick," Ethan said, and for an instant it wasn't about Mateo at all. It was about Paige, who might be scanning the stands for a father-shaped absence. He felt the old text on his phone like a pebble in a shoe. He picked it up. On the screen, "I'm sitting in the stands, section 327. If you want to see me after, I'll wait." He'd written it this morning when the bathroom mirror had been honest and more tired than he liked. He'd stared at it until the words were just shapes, as if he could denerve them by looking. He'd put the phone face down as if he could turn over a feeling, and it would stop existing. Sophie had wriggled down to the sliver of bench between him and Maya without asking, a little bird roosting between 2 branches. She smelled like shampoo that promised apples and truth. She was humming again. Maya adjusted the bouquet. Ethan looked at the message, at the woman whose life had learned the art of squeezing and still made room for strangers, at the child who assumed she belonged anywhere her feet could dangle. "Do it," Maya said, not looking at his phone at all, not even knowing what it showed. She said it into the churning air, to herself and to him and to every person trying to decide if the next small risk was the one that would hurt or heal. "If it matters, do it. The worst they can say is no." He didn't realize he'd breathed out until his body asked for air again. He tapped. The message left, a small blue thing streaking into the world like a paper boat in a flood. He waited for panic. It didn't come. Instead, that inner strap around his chest loosened, an actual physiological sigh that had nothing to do with headlines and everything to do with being a person who had said a thing out loud, even if it was made of pixels. A beat later, his phone buzzed. Heat shot up his spine. He looked. It was PR again, cameras sweeping VIP section. You sure you don't want a seat? He turned the device face down and laughed, a dry, incredulous huff at how wrong and right the world could be at once. What? Maya asked, smiling despite herself. Spam, he said. Someone trying to move me where I don't belong. Get in line, Maya said, rolling her eyes with a warmth that felt like a soft glove. We're all trying to be moved. On the field, they were into the M's. That's us, Maya whispered, her hand flying to her throat. That's, she pressed the program into Sophie's hand. Get ready to scream. Names unfurled. Microphone static, then clear, then swallowed by cheers. Matilda Ortez, Morgan Ramirez, Mateo, the last name snagged, mispronounced into something with too many corners. Maya smiled anyway, teeth and tears at once. Reyes, she finished for the announcer, and the sound that left her broke something and mended it simultaneously. It had the same force as prayer, and much less restraint. She exploded upward, bouquet waving, tissue paper like clouds bursting. Sophie screamed with abandon. Ethan was on his feet before he knew it, scanning the dark caps, trying to catch the face he didn't know and would know anyway, because love is an idiot savant. A young man with a white tassel flicked his gaze up and, for a split second, found them. He lifted his chin, pressed his fist to his heart twice, a code only the three of them knew in that second, and Maya caught it and sent it back. Ethan felt something inside him realign, like a bone clicking into its proper socket after being out so long he'd forgotten what right felt like. When they sat again, breathless and silly, Maya laughed and covered her mouth, unashamed of the tears sliding down her cheeks. She wiped one with the back of her hand and left a yellow smear from lily pollen there. She looked at it, then at him, and shrugged. Evidence, she said. Proof of existence. Proof, he echoed again, and set the small flower back on the program as if to say, this is the moment I will not misplace. Below, the sea of caps settled. The speeches were suddenly not generic. They were sutures closing something. Ethan's phone lay belly up, mercifully quiet. In his pocket, his thumb kept brushing the place where the send button had been, as if to make sure it had actually happened. Can we sit next to you? She had asked. He had said yes. How strange and holy, he thought, that yes could feel like this. That an empty chair could be a bridge, that a stranger's laughter could sound like a door into a room you hadn't known you were allowed to enter. Maya glanced sideways at him, curious and content, and not ready to name either. And he caught himself wondering when the last time was that he'd wanted to know what a stranger would laugh at next. The question startled him, not for what it asked, but for the fact of its wanting. He let it sit there between them, small and bright and alive. The applause ebbed into a sea-swell murmur, the kind that lulls and unsettles in equal measure. Ethan's pulse had finally smoothed into something human when his phone shivered again. He didn't want to look, he looked anyway. A single line. Paige. Please don't. Not today. It wasn't cruel. It was precise. It cut clean. He stared until the text blurred and the letters bled into shapes. He could hear her voice in it, careful, controlled, the same way she used to bandage her own scraped knees and tell him, I'm fine, because she thought fine was the price of not being someone's burden. He swallowed. The small lily on the program swam. He turned the phone face down as if privacy were an act of mercy he could perform on himself. Control reassembled itself over his features like armor. Chin set, shoulders neat, smile gone. Maya, still buzzing with the afterglow of Mateo's name in the air, felt the shift the way a weather vane feels the wind. The man beside her had gone quiet in a way that wasn't rest. The space between his hands was suddenly exact, like he was measuring absence. Sophie, oblivious to adult atmospheres, picked at the edge of a sticker on the bench. Can we get nachos later? She stage whispered, because all big days had a nacho clause. Maybe, Maya said, keeping her voice soft. The light made Ethan's profile a study in restraint. She fought the impulse to touch his sleeve and ask, Are you okay? Strangers didn't get to ask that. Or maybe they were the only ones who could, people with no stake in your defenses. Behind them, a rustle of recognition moved like a rumor under the row. Is that? A woman's voice said, low and amazed. No, he wouldn't be here. But the jawline, another voice younger. I think it's him, Mom. Look at his hands. Ethan's neck prickled. There it was, the other weather, the one he had learned to predict like a sailor knew currents. Fame, its odd cousin was money, both warp distance. He felt the thin veil of anonymity lift. Out of the corner of his eye, the black lens of a phone angled. He drew his cap down an imperceptible inch, a boy hiding under a towel. Maya's eyes flicked to the program still on her knee. Paige Mercer. The last name chimed against the first he'd given them. Ethan. Mercer. She inhaled like a diver who'd just noticed the ocean. 1,000 news blurbs she'd scrolled past when sleep wouldn't come reassembled themselves. The photos of him on stages, hand outstretched to shake with valedictorians. An article about his foundation covering first-gen tuition. The profile that mentioned the divorce like a footnote and the word estranged like it was a weather pattern. He noticed her noticing. A muscle feathered in his cheek. He expected contempt. What he found was something worse, compassion. It unnerved him. She began, then course-corrected. Is it going to be a problem? I was trying to avoid. He didn't finish the sentence because he didn't know which noun belonged there. Trouble? Photos? Himself? I should probably go. He said it almost kindly, like he was excusing himself from a party early, so the host wouldn't have to pretend she wanted him to stay. Because of them? Maya angled her head toward the murmurous row behind, where the words Mr. Mercer hung like a moth. Because of me, he said, too honest and too fast. He closed his hand around the phone like it could anchor him. I didn't mean to. You didn't do anything, she said. Reflexive, fierce. You sat in a chair. He almost laughed. You'd be surprised what I've managed to ruin by sitting in a chair. What is that supposed to mean? She asked, and instantly felt the bridge between them lower itself a notch. There it was, her old defensive humor. The one that said, I don't need from you. The one that had kept bill collectors and ex-boyfriends and bureaucrats out of her house. She hated that it snuck into this place where a kindness had been building like a slow sunrise. Nothing, he said, the word a gate closing. It means, he stopped. How to explain that attention followed him like a weather system, and he had spent years either orchestrating it or running from it. How to tell a stranger that the worst thing about wealth wasn't loneliness, it was consequence. That every glance became loaded, every yes had invisible zeros attached, every kindness got counted twice, once for the thing itself and once for intent. He shifted his body a tiny angle away. Maya felt it like a draft. She reacted the way people do when a warm thing leaves. She hugged her arms in closer and made herself smaller without meaning to. We can move if we're bugging you, she said lightly. There's a thrilling patch of stairs 3 rows down with my name on it. You're not, he stopped again. The polite lies felt useless in his mouth, and the truth felt too vulnerable to hand to someone whose last name he only knew because of a star next to a printed line. It's not you, he tried. I sent a message I shouldn't have, and I got a reply. I'm trying to do the right thing by not making anything worse. Right. She nodded because that was what you did when someone admitted to rain you couldn't feel. She was suddenly hot under her cardigan. The band had started a jaunty riff that felt like an insult. Sophie, sensing an adult temperature drop, scooted her knees under Maya's palm until the small bones fit perfectly into the grooves of protection. I'm sorry, Ethan said, and the apology was large and shapeless, wearing too many coats. You and your daughter, it was nice, and he exhaled. I'm rusty. At talking to people? Maya asked before she could stop herself. At not breaking things, he said. The truth flared between them like a match. They both looked at it and then away. Below, the line of graduates processed toward the stage. Mortarboards bobbed like a field of mechanical flowers. The announcer's voice wobbled on the wind. Above, the sky had begun a slow costume change. A smudge of cloud slid over the sun. The heat eased half a degree. A toddler somewhere cried because someone had taken his grape. From behind them, a voice broke in, bright and officious. Mr. Mercer? A woman in a blazer that could cut glass leaned in from the aisle, smile primed. She had a press badge swinging on a lanyard. Kendra Phillips, Metro News. Just a quick quote about the scholarship program. So many of your recipients here today. Ethan's face rearranged itself into the version that belonged to cameras. It was infinitesimal, as quick as a blink, but Maya felt it like a door closing in the wind. He stood because he had learned long ago that you could not deflect attention sitting down. You had to meet it standing, negotiate with it, tell it a story that let you walk away with your skin. I'm here as a parent, he said, not unfriendly, the practiced cadence of someone who could give you nothing and make it sound like a gift. Today's about the graduates. Kendra's eyes brightened, scenting better story in refusal. Her gaze flicked to Maya, to Sophie, to the bouquet with its bruised lilies, and Maya felt herself be categorized at a speed that could leave burn marks. Fangirl? Friend? Normal person? Prop? Maya kept her chin level. Something in her long-exhausted dignity flared. We're parents too, she said. His line is long. Your line can wait. Kendra's smile held. Of course, she said, already angling her phone for a candid. Ethan stepped closer to Maya without touching, creating a geometry that suggested alliance without inviting gossip. Not today, he said to the reporter again, and there was an edge in it that rarely made public appearances. Kendra's eyebrows lifted. Ah, there it is. But the moment was interrupted by the scoreboard's sudden flash of yellow. Weather alert, it read in capital letters that stole everyone's breath even before the announcer said, Ladies and gentlemen, due to lightning in the area, we are temporarily pausing the ceremony. Please proceed calmly to the concourse. A collective groan, then motion. The crowd lifted and pushed, a tide that had decided who it wanted to be. The first audible crack of thunder arrived not far behind the announcement, and like a reflex in 1,000 bodies, people folded umbrellas out of nowhere, babies were scooped up, purses snapped, programs snapped shut. Maya's hand found Sophie's automatically. Sophie's fingers were damp, excited. Adventure, she whispered, because any change is an adventure to a child whose mother makes even bus rides into stories. Maya wound the bouquet tight against her side and stood. Panic rose, irrational and old, born of too many rooms where exit was a hope, not a plan. Kendra vanished into the stream of moving bodies, already talking into her phone. Ethan took in the human math. This was the part where people got small and selfish, where parents became wolves and children became lambs. He felt that old instinct to step away, to protect himself from whatever would inevitably get spun out of a photo of him under a storm cloud next to a woman in a thrift store sweater. He almost did it. He could slide down the aisle, cut across 2 sections, find the stairwell no one used, call security, get hidden. He could become a problem that did not exist. He looked at Maya, who had her chin up and her jaw set and her child in a grip that said nothing will come between here and my arms, and he chose, ridiculously, impulsively, against the advice of a dozen professionals, to stay. Let's move, he said, and without letting the word feel like a claim, he put his hand out. Not touching, but there, a bridge if she wanted it. She looked at his palm, then his face. Pride and practicality argued in her throat. Another thunderclap ended the debate. Okay, she said. But if you get trampled, I refuse to feel guilty. I accept my fate, he said, and the ghost of a smile returned for a second like a bird that had forgotten it had somewhere to be. The aisle became current, channeled by aluminum and human impatience. Bodies pressed. The smell of rain arrived, metallic and fat. A kid behind them shoved, then apologized. Someone yelled, "Keep it moving." Someone else snapped back. Where? Onto the field? And the unkind humor in it felt like a relief valve. Ethan drifted to the side where he could be a buffer. His jacket would get damp. He had other jackets. He held his arm behind Maya and Sophie in a human parenthesis, and felt something loosen in his chest at the simple animality of the posture. Protect now, think later. They reached the top of the steps. The concourse yawned below like a concrete canyon already filling with noise. The sky deepened. Drops began, 1, 2, then a patter that telegraphed its intention. Maya glanced at Ethan, at the slope of his shoulders, the way he had inserted himself between them and the push without crowding them. He had tried to leave and had stayed. He had been recognized and had chosen common shelter over a corridor with his name on it. It should have made her trust him less. It made something else happen, something she didn't have a word for yet and didn't entirely welcome. He checked his phone, a reflex as much as necessity. No new message from Paige. The old 3 words sat there like a sign on a locked door. Please don't. Not today. He could honor that. He could go home and still have this. These lilies, this tiny girl with light-up shoes. This woman who laughed like a person who knew the cost of joy. He could file it under almosts and move on. And yet, the rain began in earnest, drumming on the metal roof as if to say, you don't get to decide where shelter happens. The crowd funneled them into shadow. The ceremony had been interrupted. Maybe everything else could be too. He felt the thought and, out of habit, resisted it. They started down the steps together, a unit made by weather and accident and a yes that still hummed between them. Toward the concourse where fate would be decided by something as dumb as where the dry patches were. Toward a forced pause that would ask more questions than it answered. The concourse swallowed them with a wet echo. Concrete ribs arced overhead, humming with the storm. The scent was a strange mix: rain on hot metal, wet denim, burnt cheese from the nacho stand, sugar, fear. People pooled under overhangs and around food carts, a crowd turning itself into 1,000 small shelters. "Shelter in place, please," the PA repeated, a calm voice laid over Thunder's impatience. "We expect the delay to be brief." "Brief," Maya muttered, eyeing the seam where the metal awning met the gray sky. A crack of lightning mapped a net across the clouds, and the whole place held its breath, then exhaled with the drumroll rain. "Here," Ethan said, steering them gently toward a pillar with a little negative space behind it, the way fluent city dwellers wedge themselves into the subway and still find a triangle of air. He took off his jacket without ceremony and laid it on the concrete so Sophie could sit without feeling the cold soaked up into her bones. Sophie plunked down on the makeshift island, delight undiluted by weather. "I am a burrito," she announced, wrapping the bouquet in her arms like a blanket. "A lily burrito." Maya opened her mouth to protest the jacket. Two halves of pride and etiquette, but what came out was a sigh of gratitude. "Thank you." It was not a word she gave easily. He nodded like he was relieved she had taken it. The crowd compressed, then relaxed, a living bellows. An usher went pelting by, yelling into a walkie-talkie. A vendor a few carts down began pulling soft pretzels up from their warmers, lining them like question marks. A baby wailed and was absorbed back into a chest. "Bathroom?" Sophie asked, like a volcano thinking about volcanoing. Maya looked over at the ladies' line, which already snaked behind a shuttered souvenir stand. She calculated, made a face. "We're going to breathe through it," she said. "If it gets code red, we'll sprint." "I can hold a place in line," Ethan offered, already taking a step, the reflex to fix things outrunning the thought. "No," Maya said quickly, too quickly, the old reflex flaring. "You don't owe us anything. We are not your project." The words rose and jammed in her throat. She softened them. "Thank you. We'll manage." He absorbed the yes inside the no, stepped back into their triangle of air. Thunder rolled, closer now, the kind that made your ribs remember they were cages. The lights over the concourse flickered. A ripple of quiet moved through the crowd, then broke into nervous laughter. A security guard wove through, gaze scanning faces for trouble shaped like intention. His eyes snagged on Ethan's profile, trained recognition pinging. "Sir," he said, respectful, conspiratorial. "We can move you to VIP shelter if you'd like." "Quieter." "Less," he nodded toward the crush. Ethan looked down at the jacket where Sophie was making a serious effort to turn a lily into a living microphone. "I'm good here, thanks," he said. The guard blinked, recalibrated. "All right." He didn't push. He handed Sophie a glow-stick bracelet from his pocket like a magician. Sophie gasped and slid it onto her wrist. The guard grinned and moved on. "Do they hand those out to everybody?" Maya asked, eyebrows arched in a social scientist's curiosity. "If they do, I have been in the wrong lines all my life," Ethan said. It was a small laugh. It loosened something. He glanced down the concourse. The reporter from before was 20 yards away, phone up, her face arranged in the neutral interest of a predator who had learned patience. He turned his face slightly toward the pillar and felt Maya clock it. "It's fine," she said low. "We're invisible. I'm a champ at it." "I've never been very good at invisible," he said, and the truth in it, half strange, half sad, sat between them like a middle name. He pulled out his phone as if it were a talisman he didn't quite believe in. Nothing new from Paige. The last 3 words glowed. "Please don't. Not today." He put the phone away. He'd honored it by staying away. He was, in his own way, honoring it now too by staying. But the tension between those two kinds of staying hummed through him like a live wire. "Hungry?" he asked, because there were things you didn't say in a storm, and because feeding children was a universal dialect. "We're okay," Maya said reflexively, then caught herself. Sophie was already watching the pretzels like a scientist examines a hypothesis. Pretzels would be a major contribution to democracy. Democracy deserves salt, he agreed. He stepped into the line and came back with 3 pretzels and 2 bottles of water, the paper warm through his palms. "I would have gotten cheese," he said, but lightning and open vats of orange seemed like a bad combination. "You live wild," Maya murmured, and when he handed her a bottle, their fingers brushed. Sparklers, uninvited and unmistakable, went off in the nerves of their hands. They both pretended it hadn't happened, because what else do you do when electricity behaves itself in public? Sophie, mouth full, said, "What's your daughter's favorite food?" Ethan didn't need to think. "Pancakes. With chocolate chips. No syrup. She says syrup is a trap." Sophie considered this solemn. "I respect her." "Noted," he said. He hadn't said her name. He didn't know if he was protecting Paige by not saying it out loud or protecting himself from the sound. He found, to his surprise, that he wanted Maya to ask anyway. "She texted you?" Maya asked instead. She kept her voice neutral and kind, like she was setting an animal trap and hoping to catch nothing but air. He nodded. She asked for space. "I am," he searched. "Trying to learn what space looks like when you're a father and every instinct is to show up and make it easier." She doesn't want easier, maybe. She wants different. He took a breath. "I'm bad at different." Maya didn't fill the space. She chewed and waited. "My son wanted easier for years," she said finally. "He used to tell the school that if they wanted him to focus, they should let him chew gum and sit in the back and listen to music. They said no because rules. I said okay because survival. Sometimes they need a different shape than the world has templates for." He looked at her, something like relief flickering. "What did you do when the school said no?" "I became the school at home," she said simply. "Head of department of chewing gum. Tenure track." He laughed then, actually laughed. Sophie beamed like she'd just earned points in a game she didn't know she was playing. The storm leaned in. Rain hammered the metal roof like drumline. The lights hiccuped again, and this time they stayed dim, the concourse shrinking not in size but in gentleness. People's voices dropped. The outside became a rumor. Ethan felt, flawed and foolish, that he was in a pocket of the day the weather had given them on purpose. Ever been stuck in a storm with a stranger who stopped feeling like a stranger? If lightning rewired your plans like this, would you talk, or keep your head down? Tell me how you'd handle it in the comments. An announcement crackled overhead. "We anticipate a 30-minute delay. Please remain where you are." Sophie groaned in the key of 9-year-olds and wriggled. "I need to pee now." "Right," Maya said, already standing. "We'll be fast. If we're not back in 5 and you hear screaming, assume I opened a portal into a better bathroom and follow the sound." Ethan stood too. "I'll hold your spot." She hesitated, pride and prudence again waltzing. "You don't need. It's a good jacket," he said. "It would like to keep working." He offered her a humor out instead of a favor. She took it grateful. They slipped into the line, disappeared around the curve of the concourse. Ethan stayed, jacket spread like a prayer rug. He picked up Maya's program, flipping the pages without reading, hand landing on the star she'd drawn next to Mateo's name. He traced the ink with his thumb, as if certainty could be borrowed. The lily on his own program had wilted in the heat of the crowd. It still smelled like green. "Excuse me," a voice said too close. Kendra, the reporter, had drifted back, camera half raised. "Just a human interest shot," she murmured. "You being here with?" "Please don't," he heard himself say, and the echo inside the words jarred him. He managed a thinner smile. "Not today." She tilted her head, evaluated the headline value of kindness versus persistence, and drifted like a shark denied lunch. Maya and Sophie reappeared, triumphant. "We survived," Maya announced. There were stickers on the mirror that said "Go Graduate, Go." Inspirational bathroom. "I cried and washed my hands like an influencer." "Very hygienic," Ethan said solemnly. He handed Sophie her pretzel piece, now slightly cold and entirely adored. "I guarded your island. No pirates." Maya eased back onto the jacket and then immediately tried to scoot herself an inch off it, habit tugging at a boundary that had already been crossed. "We should get you your jacket back," she said. "It's fine," he said. "It's meeting new people." It needed to get out more. She looked at him like she could see the man inside the joke, the one who had orchestrated rooms and then sat alone in them. "Do you get to tell anyone when you're scared?" she asked. The question so simple it landed like a pebble in a well and took a long time to make a sound. He opened his mouth. Closed it. "Not really," he said finally. "Power makes a bad confessional." She nodded, unsurprised. "You can tell us," she said, and immediately looked like she wanted to take the words back in case they were too big, too much, too soon. "I mean, if you want. Some people need to pretend they're waterproof." "I'm not," he said. "I've just paid good money for umbrellas." They both grinned, and the grin, unexpectedly, felt like an oath. Around them, a kind of party began. people who had nothing to do but be bodies with time. Someone started an a cappella rendition of the fight song badly. A toddler announced to everyone present that he did not, in fact, like thunder. A grandfather in a Letterman jacket told a kid in honor cords how the stadium used to be all bleachers, no chairs, and how his knees were a map of every season that had ever mattered. Ethan listened as if the storytelling itself were heat. He had given money to many things. He had never given this, his presence with nothing to barter. Maya's phone dinged. She fumbled it, breath hitching. A text from Mateo, delayed. They moved us inside. I saw you. Sophie waved like a maniac. Love you. She pressed the phone to her heart and laughed into it, the way you laugh into a coat when it's too cold. She showed it to Ethan, because joy demands company. He read the message and felt his own heart do the odd, impossible thing, ache and steady at the same time. The lights pulsed back to full strength with a buzz like a giant bee making a decision. A small cheer went up. The PA crackled again. Lightning has moved beyond the stadium's radius. We'll resume in 15 minutes. Sophie hooped as if she had personally negotiated with the weather. Maya let out a breath she'd been holding since the sky first growled. Ethan looked toward the mouth of the concourse, where a slice of bright sky was reappearing, wet and clean. He had the distinct, unco-like feeling that he would miss this corner of forced time when it ended. He looked at Maya then, properly, as if the weather had cleared inside the concourse too. She was watching the light come back with a half-smile that didn't announce itself. Her hair had loosened, the pencil skewed at an angle that looked like a secret. There was a smear of pollen on her cheek she hadn't noticed. He had the precise thought. She is the kind of person who would tilt an umbrella so both of you get wet a little and both of you stay dry enough. He didn't say it. He said, when this starts again, you'll go down? To the rail? To see him better? Yeah, she said. If we can elbow our way through the ants. You. I'll stay, he said. It sounded like a vow and a condition and a hope. Then I'll go. After. I don't want to ruin her day. But I can wait. You're good at that, she said, not unkindly. I'm learning, he said. He looked down at the star next to Mateo's name again, then back at her. Would it be weird if I said I want to see him up close too? Not to intrude. Just if you're going to the rail. Come, she said, surprising them both with how quickly the yes arrived. We'll be 3 elbows against the world. Plus a lily, he said. Plus a lily, she agreed. The PA's voice asked them to begin returning to their seats. The crowd uncoiled, the concourse's impossible geometry unwinding into aisles and stairwells. Sophie sprang up, glow stick blazing. Ethan picked up the jacket, shook off a few drops, and slid it back on. It held a ghost of lilies now, green and sweet, like a promise you could wear. They moved back into the stream together, shoulder to shoulder in the press and drift. And though the reprieve was over, something about the pause had stayed with them. Lightning-etched, salt-soft, undeniable. They were no longer exactly the strangers who'd climbed the steps to this day, and the knowledge made everything a little more dangerous and a lot more alive. By the time they reached the railing, the world had that washed, over-bright look storms leave behind, colors truer, edges crisp as if the air had been ironed. Water beaded on the field, diamonds in the grass. Caps bobbed again, the PA's voice found its balance. Thank you for your patience. We will now resume. Maya wedged an elbow through to the front, the bouquet hoisted like a standard. Sophie threaded herself between hips with the diplomacy of a small person who trusts adults to make way. Ethan stood just behind them, one palm on the cool metal rail, close enough to see names on honors cords, close enough to see faces when they lifted toward the stands. There, Maya whispered, and the word was a titapool. 3rd row from the end, 2 from the right. The one with the tassel stuck at a funny angle because he won't let me fix it. Ethan followed the line of her gaze and found a young man with a fresh scar near his eyebrow. Hair too short to be fashionable and exactly right to be clean. He had that look, half disbelief, half defiant joy. He exhaled, and the exhale felt personal. Hi, kiddo, Maya said, voice pitched to reach a specific heart. The boy glanced up, caught, broke into a grin. He lifted 2 fingers and touched his heart twice. Sophie whapped the rail with both hands like a drum roll. Do you remember the first time you knew your kid was a person? Ethan asked softly, the question falling out before he had a right to it. Yeah, Maya said. He was 3. He lined up all his toy cars by color, and then by favorite. When I tried to help, he said, no help, Mama. Not mean, just certain. He liked things his way. I recognized myself, and it scared me and made me proud both. Ethan nodded. She was 6, he said. She poured herself cereal and then poured half her bowl into mine and said, "That's fair." He smiled, an old ache ergonomically shaped to fit his mouth. I was on a call. I told her to go on without me. Maya's eyes slid to him. Empathy like a hand he wasn't asking for and couldn't refuse. "Work. Always," he said. The graduates around Mateo shifted. A campus staffer passed by with a walkie-talkie tucked into her back pocket and a ratty smile. The air smelled like cut grass and damp cotton. Down to the left, the choir regrouped, their black binders spotted with rain. You ever wish someone had told you when you were 20 that this right here, waiting with people and whether you didn't choose, was going to be the point? Maya asked, small sardonic, true tender. I wouldn't have believed them, Ethan said. I thought the point was the being seen. Turns out it's the seeing. She let that sit. Then, gently, you and your daughter, it sounds like you've been trying to see each other for a long time. He tightened his hand on the rail. The metal bit. He let it. I made a lot of noise when all she wanted was quiet. How old was she when? When I turned her into a story, he said, saving her from the softness of the word that would have made him weaker. 17. There was a charity gala at her school. They asked if I'd say a few words because we'd donated to the arts program. He glanced toward the field, the thousands of faces doing thousands of small braveries. She had a piece in the student show. She asked in the kitchen, with pancake batter on her sleeve, if this one day could be just hers. I said of course. Then my comms team called. The RSVP list had mayors on it. I told them to bring the cameras. I told myself it was for the program. What did she do? She took her name tag off, left it on a chair, and went home. He breathed a short, humorless laugh. I did the speech. I shook hands. I wrote a check. I opened my phone afterward and saw a text from her. You turn me into a press release and then wonder why I don't talk in your language. For a second, all the noise softened to a blur. Maya's fingers tightened around the bouquet stems, leaves squeaking. That would break me, she said, simple, no dramatics. That would break me and make me stubborn forever. He nodded. She stopped answering me for a while. When she did start again, it was, he tapped his chest once, a rueful punctuation. Brief. And true in a way I had a talent for avoiding. Last time we spoke, really spoke, she said she didn't want me at her college graduation because she didn't want to spend the whole day translating me for people and pretending it didn't bother her. And you came anyway, Maya said. Not accusation, translation. I came to the building, he said. I'm trying to honor her line. Please don't. Not today. But I couldn't not be in the air here. He swallowed, throat tight. I've learned to buy tickets for events and sit in the back like an uncle no one introduces. It's a stupid compromise, and it's my level. He didn't realize he was shaking until the rail rattled in time with his grip. Maya slid her hand along until it was near his, not touching but present, a careful horizon. You can't fix it with money, she said, and the way she said it wasn't accusation either. It was a truth she had had to choke down like unripe fruit. I tried, he said. For a long time. Checks are punctual. People aren't. I told myself I was being reliable. You were being safe, she said. Safer than loving loud, he said. My father was a loud lover. He loved payday and making promises and leaving again. My mother, he swallowed. She loved quietly. She bought lilies for big days and boiled chicken when we were sick and folded coupons like origami. She told me, say yes when you can, and when you're in doubt, bring lilies. Maya glanced down at the bouquet, at the pollen dusting her fingers yellow. You brought one, she said, voice thin with sudden humor. It broke a little, but it made it. He smiled at that, watery. I keep breaking and hoping that counts as bringing. For a few beats, the stadium made their hearts do its choreography. Clapping when other families clapped, cheering when other names were called, standing when they were asked to stand. Maya breathed through it like a birth she'd done a decade prior, a motion that belonged more to body than mind. You? He asked then, because vulnerability without reciprocity curdles into exhibition. You speak fluent quiet, but it's not your first language. She exhaled a laugh that was more a confession. I had Mateo at 18. I was supposed to start a nursing program. I learned instead how to change a diaper in the dark and nap in the pediatrician's waiting room while trying not to look poor. His dad was, she grimaced, affectionate and exhausted. A good storyteller. Bad with clocks. He left, came back, left. Like a comet, my mother says. Pretty and unhelpful. And Sophie's father? Ethan asked carefully. Different man, she said, equally careful. Different kind of leaving. He left from across a room. The kind where everything I did was wrong, because it wasn't the way he would have done it. I learned to explain my groceries and my thoughts like I was in a meeting. We were never violent. We were just small. I left because I didn't like who I was becoming. She tipped her chin toward Sophie, who was mid-argument with a kid about whether tassels were edible. She saved my life by being a person I wouldn't let learn that smallness. He absorbed that like weather. The music swelled, that triumphant Ken-track that always sounded like elevator music with a cape. A gust of breeze lifted the tassels into fish. Ethan looked at Maya's hands on the bouquet, how the knuckles were nicked, how there was a tiny pale scar along the web of her thumb, a crescent like a tooth mark. He didn't ask. She didn't offer. There was this time, Maya said, because stories didn't arrive on command, but sometimes they surprised you by volunteering. When Mateo almost dropped out. Last year. The car died. I was working nights at the clinic and days cleaning offices. He said he'd take a semester off, just one. I knew one is a slope. She smiled, small and fierce. I wrote to everyone, his advisor, the financial aid office, this emergency fund I found in a sidebar on the website. They called it opening doors. They gave him $500, and it was like God dropped a grocery bag on our porch. He cried and pretended he didn't. I cried and didn't pretend. Ethan stared at the field, because if he looked at her she would see him rearranging. Opening doors. The phrase landed with the weight of a late-night ritual, his ritual. He read those appeals because sometimes when sleep wouldn't come, the only thing that settled his mind was saying yes to people who would never know his name. He remembered a letter, a funny one, a stubborn one. A mother had written, "We are eco-friendly warriors with no gas money." He had laughed out loud at 2 a.m. and signed the approval and thought, "Whoever you are, I like you." He almost said it. He almost told her that this too was a place where their lives had touched without permission. But he stopped. This was not the time to turn her story into evidence of his goodness. He swallowed and said, "I'm glad you asked." "I was raised Catholic," she said wryly. "Asking was a sin. I'm learning it's sometimes a miracle." A name nearby mangled into a sound familiar enough to pull Mateo's gaze. His head snapped up. He found them again, hand to heart, once, twice. Maya mirrored it, that small sacrament. "Please don't. Not today," she said after a moment, repeating the phrase he had told her, trying it on her own tongue. "It's not a no forever." "I know," he said, and his mouth twisted around the humility that didn't come easily. "I have been very bad at today. I'm trying to be better at not today. Try being good at this minute," she said. This minute is alive and asking very little but everything. He let out a breath he hadn't noticed he was holding. He angled closer until the line of their shoulders almost touched, a permission both small and enormous. "This minute," he said, almost reverent. On the stage, a photographer adjusted the mic stand, and the squeal made everyone wince and laugh. The dean cleared his throat and launched into the conferral text again, words like baton tosses. Ethan slid his phone out without thinking. The lock screen lit up. A blurry photo. A girl on a kitchen counter at age 9, making a mustache out of chocolate chip pancake batter, eyes wicked with mischief. Maya saw it, and then looked away, politeness kicking in. He saw her see, and for once didn't hide. "She made it," he said, barely louder than the buzz of the lights. "With or without me, she made it." "You helped," Maya said. "Maybe not the ways I thought," he said. "That's the thing with love," she said, gaze back on the field where her son was now bouncing on his heels like a tuned engine. "It's not a brand you can strategize." He laughed softly. "You'd be surprised how many times I tried." "I'd be surprised if you hadn't," she returned. Something passed between them then. Not resolution, not romance, not yet. A recognition. A stilled metronome finding a new tempo. She had a scar on her thumb. He had a tan line on his ring finger. They both had lily pollen somewhere on their faces. The world, washed and bright, made room. A new gust skated across the field. The sun broke full. The announcer called a block of names that marched them closer to the alphabet's end, closer to a moment when lives cross a stage and don't, closer to choices either of them might be brave enough to make. And when Ethan glanced sideways at Maya, the look that returned to him wasn't permission or promise. It was steadiness. It said, "I see you. Now let's see if you can keep seeing." The dean's voice rolled out like a tide returning. "By the authority vested in me by the state and the board of trustees." The stadium rose to its feet as if pulled by a string. On the field, Thousands of tassels moved from right to left like birds lifting from a wire. A gasp-turned cheer climbed the bowl, cresting into a single, ridiculous, beautiful shout, "Done." Maya clapped until her hands stung. Beside her, Sophie jumped so high her glow-stick bracelet flashed SOS into daylight. Ethan found himself laughing, helpless and ungroomed, because the sound of other people's joy was contagious, and he'd spent too long pretending it wasn't. Mortarboards flew and vanished, thrown like wishes into a sky that had decided to behave. On the programs, conferral text blurred into confetti. The band blared a song the brass section loved and the woodwinds tolerated. Down on the field, the graduates turned into a milling traffic jam of black robes and scuffed shoes, hugging, screaming, taking photos like they were being paid by the click. Maya leaned on the rail as if it were the hinge of the day. "Okay," she breathed. "Meet-up zones. Alphabet soup. Everyone moves like they've trained for this their whole lives, and still no one knows what they're doing." "How do we find him?" Ethan asked, stuffed with a happiness that wasn't careful. "Look for the one who forgot to take the tag off his sleeve," she said, scanning a sea of black for the flicker of her boy. "And for a head sticking up because he's taller since Tuesday." She laughed, shook her head. "Or we follow the sound of the happiest yelling, which I'm responsible for." The ushers opened the gates and the stands emptied by sections, bodies flowing with that peculiar post-event logic. Stopping in narrow places, speeding in wide ones, compressing into bleeding knots where families tried to cross-counter a flood. Maya took Sophie's hand, lifted the bouquet high like a lighthouse, and shoved gently through Joy. Ethan shadowed, his jacket brushing hers, his palm a quiet bracket against stray elbows. Under the stands, signs designated corrals for letters, AF, GL, MR. The MR zone roared with the frequency of names spoken in love. There were balloons that said "we did it" like they were reminding the air. There were aunties with lipstick ready to test their staying power on cheeks. There were dads holding cell phones like periscopes. A toddler in a paw-print shirt barreled into Ethan's shin, bounced off, and kept running, returning a fat pretzel to the ground with perfect accuracy. He grinned down. The child never knew he'd existed. It felt like peace. "There!" Sophie pointed with an urgency that beheaded any doubt. "Ma!" Maya followed the vector of a 9-year-old's joy and saw him. Matteo. Cap crooked, tassel stuck to his eyebrow like a rebellious comma. Stubble like he'd decided this was the day to look almost man, and then forgot to finish. The same scar near the eyebrow, healed to a pink memory. His gown was unzipped just enough that a sliver of his thrifted dress shirt showed, the one she'd ironed this morning with the patience of a person smoothing history. He saw them, and the silly swagger that had been brewing his whole adolescence collapsed into pure, 8-year-old sprint. The crowd broke just enough. He hit the barrier and leaned over it, both arms wide, and Maya was already there, reaching into the space that separated field from stands, as if to deny the existence of any lines between now and all the mornings before. They collided awkwardly, her reaching, him bending, Sophie wedged in like a triumphant flower. It would have made a terrible photograph, and it was perfect. "You did it," Maya said, not whispering, not shouting, saying it with the humility you owe to a miracle and the authority you owe to truth. "I did it," he said, dazed giddy. "You did it." "Nah," she said, half sob, half laugh. "We did it." He kissed Sophie's head. She declared, "I am officially his publicist," and someone laughed behind them, a stranger caught in the net of it. Ethan hung back, a step away, letting the scene be itself. Watching it felt like standing near a fire, palms up to heat that was not yours but fixes you anyway. He wanted to look away because it felt private. He wanted to keep looking because it felt like the point of the morning. Maya remembered him and tugged him forward with a glance. "This is Ethan," she said, breathless. What was he? The man with the jacket-turned island? The stranger who stayed? The father who didn't run from a storm? He's a friend we made in the last hour, who feels like we've known him for more than that. "Sir," Matteo said, easy and courteous, offering a hand that was big enough now that it startled her. His grip was warm, sincere. "You got stuck in the lightning, too?" "We did," Ethan said. He took the hand. There it was again, the clean, quiet current of being recognized as an ordinary man in an extraordinary day. "You're Matteo. Congratulations." "Thanks." Matteo grimaced at his tassel. "I think we're going to find pieces of this thing in our laundry for the next decade." "You will," Maya said with the authority of someone who still found confetti circles months after a birthday because joy infiltrates like glitter. She lifted the bouquet. "For you. The lilies are resilient. Like you." Ma, they smell like Grandma's church and the hospital, and also happy, Mateo said, burying his face in them because he'd never been good at polite gratitude when love was a flood. He lifted his head, pollen dusted his cheek. Ow, I think they punched me. They punched all of us, Maya said, wiping the smear with her sleeve. We needed it. Photo? Ethan asked, holding up his phone like a volunteer in a sacred ritual. Trust me, you'll like it later when you're too tired to remember how beautiful this felt. Please, Maya said. She handed him hers, too. Back up. He took both and backed up a step, knees against the rail. The world arranged itself, the bouquet a slash of white and green. Sophie perched like a spark. Mateo in the middle, cap askew, proof incarnate. Maya's arm around them both, anchor and sail. Okay, Ethan said, turning his voice into something gentle and sure. One where you look at me. One where you look at each other. One where you close your eyes and think safe. They did, laughing at the last prompt, and then somehow not laughing at all because when you tell your body to remember safety, it sometimes obeys. He took the photos. He glanced at the screen and felt a stupid, private sting. These people had found a way to be in us with a velocity he'd forgotten was possible. Send one to Grandma, Maya said, already digging for her cracked case. And one to the aunt who always says she's praying for us, and I think actually does. I'll airdrop you, Ethan said, then caught himself. Sorry. Do you? We do, she said, amused. I'm contemporary. Phones chirped, digital magic crossing inches. On Ethan's screen, his own gallery populated with images that didn't belong to him and did. It startled something in him into hope. A voice rose nearby. Mercer? And the syllables pricked the hair at the back of his neck. He turned. A young man in an honor cord and an ill-fitting suit looked astounded. Sir, Mr. Mercer, wow. I'm Jamal. Scholarship cohort 2 years ago. Your program saved me. He gestured toward the crush of gowns. I just wanted to say thank you. I didn't think you'd really be here like a normal. He cut himself off, embarrassed. Hi, Jamal, Ethan said, and the instinct to be chairman bled away. The instinct to be person arrived, shy and relieved. I remember your letter. You wrote about fixing engines in your cousin's driveway. Are you still doing mechanical engineering, or did they suck you into consulting? Jamal's grin bifurcated his face. Still engines. I got an internship with Ford. He glanced at Maya and Sophie and Mateo, trying to figure out their orbital relation to this gravitational body. Anyway, congratulations, sorry. I'll let you. He shook Ethan's hand as if shaking a tradition out of it and vanished. Maya's eyes flicked to Ethan, tracking the exchange, storing it. She wasn't naive. She knew big lives came with satellites. It didn't dim what she'd just watched. If anything, it clarified it. He'd remembered an old letter. He'd asked about engines with genuine interest. No cameras. No speech. You hungry? She asked him, a question that had nothing to do with lunch and everything to do with the day. The kind of hungry that pretzels can't touch? He exhaled a laugh he hadn't been aware of carrying. Yes. Us too, she said. But we promised the family we'd meet them at the taco truck on 18th. Post-graduation ritual. My mom will be there with napkins and unsolicited opinions. Tacos are holy, Ethan said, smiling. I wouldn't want to interfere with a sacrament. You wouldn't, Maya said, eyes bright. But, if you want, we could grab a coffee on the corner before we fight the taco line. There's a cart by the south gate. 10 minutes. We can't offer more. Mateo is about to be captured by 5 cousins. He looked at the field, then back at her. Coffee would be perfect. You good with a detour? Maya asked Mateo, maternal permission blending with adult honesty. He nodded, eyes on Ethan with a curiosity that had sharpened. Yeah, I got time. I'm trying to pace the part where people touch my face and tell me I was little once. They will, Maya warned him. I know, he sighed theatrical. I will accept my fate. They peeled away from the rail like a comet losing a little piece of itself to each gravity they passed. They slid into the stream heading toward the south gate, Sophie leading with glow-stick diplomacy. Ethan and Maya fell into step easily, the way people do when conversation has already made room for elbows and shoulders and the possibility of bumping without sting. Do you ever feel like a day splits, and there's the version where you went home as planned, and there's the one where you took the left turn and ended up here? Maya asked. All the time, Ethan said. The trick is figuring out which one is living and which one is hiding. And which one is better coffee, she said. Always a deciding factor. The coffee cart was blessedly old-fashioned, actual percolators, a tip jar with scribble stars, a menu that had more heart than options. The barista, forearms tattooed with constellations, leaned out. "Graduation glow," she announced. "You people need sugar." "2 coffees, 1 hot chocolate," Maya said. "And do you have churros?" She crossed her fingers, mock prayerful. "Do I have lungs?" The barista shot back, already plunking 4 into a paper cone. They moved to the curb, forming a little island of steam and cinnamon. Sophie bit into a churro and closed her eyes like she'd seen adults do when they tasted something near mystical. Matteo laughed from somewhere down his chest, where new kinds of joy had recently moved in. Ethan held his cup like a sacrament. "Pancakes are my daughter's favorite," he said, watching the steam. "We used to do Saturday mornings, just us. We'd argue about how many chocolate chips counted as too many. She always won. I kept telling myself we'd pick it up again when this deal closed, or that board settled, or later." "There's a store," Maya said, "where later is always on sale and somehow you can never find your size." He looked up, met her eyes. "Exactly. So by now," she said. "Even if it's not perfect. Even if it's different." "I texted her today," he said. "She said don't. Not today." "Give her a today where you don't make it about you," Maya said. "Then try again." He nodded. "You make it sound so simple." "It's not," she said, smiling with the kind of authority that comes from the long, thin edge of difficult days. "It's just clear." He took in her face, pollen smear finally gone, pencil still anchoring her hair like a joke with a spine. He could see the fatigue around her eyes if he looked the way he looked at budgets, for pressure points and the promise of release. He wanted to tell her she could still go to nursing school. He wanted to say, "I know a program, and let me help, and I can make calls." He didn't. He had just told a story about how his help tasted like control, how it ruined the flavor of a pancake. He swallowed the instinct and tried something new. "What do you want?" he asked. "Now that you're not the mother of a kid who needs a science fair poster and a packed lunch and a permission slip signed in blue pen?" She blinked. The answer was an old ache, and she hadn't expected to be asked. "I want to learn again," she said slowly. "I want to wear a name tag that says Maya, RN, and have hands that help people not be scared. I want Saturdays where I'm not so tired I dissolve. I want a car that doesn't lie." "Those are big and right," he said softly. He hesitated. "If you ever want a study buddy at 2 a.m., I'm excellent at making flashcards and terrible at memorizing them." She laughed. "You're offering me flashcards?" "Dramatic gestures are my weakness," he said. "Moderate gestures are my goal." "I like moderate," she said, surprised to find it true. "I like sustainable." Matteo, pretending not to listen, listened. He watched the way the man in the nice jacket made his mother's shoulders drop half an inch. He watched the way his sister leaned her head on the man's arm without quite touching, as if proximity itself were a vote. He had learned to be suspicious of men who made promises fast. This one was not promising anything except 10 minutes and a coffee that was too hot and an encore of showing up. He decided not to frown. "Can I see the photos?" he asked, saving everyone from the intensity that had pooled. Ethan handed over his phone. Matteo swiped and laughed. "I look like I'm smelling the future." "You are," Maya said. "Smells like churros," Sophie added. They ate in companionable silence for a stretch. Traffic hummed. A bike bell rang twice, cheerful. On the stadium's far side, a cheer went up for reasons that didn't require their knowing. The air was the kind that makes you think you can make changes. "Here," Ethan said impulsively, fishing something from his pocket. A small, thin booklet. One of those accordion, print your favorites instantly, deals some phones still offered if you were retro and stubborn. It's silly, but if your phone dies, you can still put this on the fridge. Maya unfolded it and saw the 3 photos he'd just taken, printed with a speed he must have set up long ago for himself, because some part of him still believed in paper and proof. "You carry a printer in your pocket? When you've been the guy who forgot to be in the picture, you overcorrect," he said, embarrassed and not. "Consider it my first moderate gesture." She didn't tell him it was the most thoughtful thing anyone had handed her in months. She didn't tell him the last time she'd printed photos had been when Sophie lost her first tooth, and the dollar from the tooth fairy had been 4 quarters, because that's what the laundry needed. She just said, "Thank you," and hoped the weight of what she meant knocked on the right door inside him. His phone buzzed. A flutter went through him, unmistakable as a bird in a small room. He looked like he wasn't going to check, and then he checked, guilty as a teenager. His eyes moved, softened, complicated. Maya pretended to study the menu of the card again. He didn't make her wonder long. From Paige, he said, reading with a care that made his voice gentler than it had been with anyone all day. She said, "Thanks for staying away. Tell me where you are after." "Maybe." "Maybe," Maya repeated, tasting the syllables like a promise and a test. "That's a sturdy word on a day like this." "It's more than I had when I woke up," he said. "You'll be brave?" she asked, not a challenge, a companionable shove. "I'll be moderately brave," he said. "No speeches. No optics. I'll be a guy in a jacket that smells like lilies." She smiled. "Good plan." From the corner of her eye she saw, again, the same reporter, without the predatory angle now, just curiosity. No camera up. A person off duty in a crowd of off-guard hearts. Kendra caught Maya's gaze, shrugged once as if to say rain makes us human, then drifted. "Okay," Maya said, standing, brushing churro sugar off her skirt. "We have to go or my mother will hunt us down with plastic forks. And I'd like to keep liking you." "I'd like that too," he said. They threw cups into a bin and began the walk toward 18th, through small rivers of families and the occasional lake of standing water that no one minded anymore. Ethan adjusted his pace to match theirs without making a ceremony of it. He held the printed strip while the ink cured in the air. He handed it to Maya like a relay baton. He didn't say, "I can drive you." He didn't say, "I can call ahead to the taco truck and buy out the line." He didn't say anything that would bend this day into his shape. At the corner, where the crowd thinned and the road opened into normal day, they stopped. The boundary between stadium magic and the city's regular breathing made itself known in the different sound of tires on wet pavement, in the way the wind smelled more like exhaust than grass, in the absence of the band's brass. "Can I text you the rest?" Ethan asked, holding up his phone like a flag of truce. "The photos. And maybe check if Paige if she." "Absolutely," Maya said. She typed her number into his phone. He watched her name appear, Maya, then added Reyes because some names deserved their families, then added a lily emoji, then deleted it because he was a grown man. He saved it. On her phone, she typed Ethan, lily jacket, and did not delete the emoji. "Coffee again," he said, and didn't build it into a plan. Let it be a seed. "Moderately sure," she said, then softened. "I'd like that." Mateo shifted his gown. "I'm going to go fight the line," he said, glancing at Ethan as if measuring whether thanks were owed, whether thanks were allowed. He threw his arms around his mother again, quick and fierce, kissed Sophie's head, then extended his hand to Ethan, second time deliberate. "Thanks for taking a good picture of my mom." "You're welcome," Ethan said, and the words landed with an intimacy that surprised them both. They parted at the corner, Maya and her kids toward tacos and cousins, and the avalanche of congratulations that every first-generation kid deserved. Ethan toward a bench under a maple where he could wait for a text that might say maybe and might say not today again. He turned once. Maya turned at the same moment. They caught each other looking and didn't flinch. "Good luck," she mouth said. He tapped his heart twice, a small thieving of Mateo's code that somehow felt blessed. He sat on the bench. The maple dropped something sticky onto his sleeve. He didn't care. He looked at the photos again and felt the oddest, most specific piece. He had not fixed anything. He had not broken anything. He had helped hold a jacket up to the rain. A gust of wind shivered the leaves. His phone lit. A text from an unknown number populated. "Hi. It's Paige. South Lawn? 15 minutes?" He laughed out loud, one hand to his eyes, the other gripping his phone. He typed back, "I'm here. I'll wait," then added, before he could edit himself into caution, "I won't make it about me." He put the phone down in his lap, face up for once. He looked toward the south lawn where the day would crack open again and tried not to over-anticipate the shape of the light. He felt the coffee warm in his blood, the sugar from the churro like a small sun in his chest, the echo of a girl's glow stick on his wrist where she had tapped him. "You're it." He felt alive. He felt like someone who could be trusted, at least for the space of one afternoon. Across town, across a few blocks, but it felt like countries. Maya and Sophie and Mateo turned the corner onto 18th and were swallowed by family noise. The cousins were loud in 3 languages. Her mother cried once, and then laughed, and then bossed the salsas. The taco guy yelled numbers that made no sense except to those who had learned their code. Maya's phone buzzed. She glanced down, saw Ethan's message to Paige because he had screenshotted it without thinking, and sent it to her like someone asking for a witness. She nodded to herself, tucked the phone away, held on to the feeling that she was part of a day that was bigger than the rooms she'd cleaned and the buses she'd ridden and the nights she'd spent at kitchen tables doing math she didn't like. She didn't know the shatter was coming. She didn't know the reporter had posted a picture of Ethan at the rail with a woman in a cardigan and a kid with a glow stick, and the caption had suggested something it shouldn't. She didn't know a phrase, opening doors, would soon reach her in a way that would sting in all the places she believed she had made her peace. For now, she ate a taco with too much salsa and didn't apologize for the mess it made. For now, she laughed when her boy pretended to hate being fussed over and then melted like butter. For now, the bond formed under a metal roof held, warm and particular, proof of existence you can fold and put in your pocket. The taco truck hissed like a locomotive as oil kissed batter. Salsa verde gathered in a shallow river on a paper plate. A cousin pressed a napkin into Maya's hand like it was a hospital bracelet. Noise, joyful, specific, exhausting, bounced between the awning and the open sky. Prima, Alma said, breathless, elbowing her way through a cluster of aunties. You're trending. Maya laughed. I'm what? Alma thrust her phone forward. On the screen, a photo from the stadium rail. A man in a low cap, Ethan, but not low enough. The angle caught the line of his jaw. The caption, Billionaire CEO Ethan Mercer waits out lightning delay with mystery mother and child. Human interest? New love. The shot caught Sophie's glow stick like a comet. Maya's profile was there, soft and unprepared. Comments spooled below like oil slicks. Get that bag, sis. PR stunt, lol. Another prop. Poor girl doesn't know. I knew he had a type. Heat rose under Maya's skin so fast the world went white around the edges for a heartbeat. Who posted that? She asked, voice low and threadbare. Metro News, Alma said. Kendra something. She wrote, no comment from Mercer's team. Girl, look at you. Maya handed the phone back like it was fielding a hot pan. I didn't consent to that photo. Aunt Carmen leaned in, catching only half the context, loving her anyway. Mija, you look beautiful. Who is this man? Your cousin says he is that rich one who gives money to students all the time. The doors one. Opening doors, Mateo said, appearing at her elbow, cheeks apple bright from attention. That's Mercer's foundation, Ma. They funded my emergency grant last year. Pride mixed with protectiveness in his voice, trying to find a setting. Is that him? The jacket guy? Her first instinct was to laugh. The second was to throw the chuo back up. Two truths hit simultaneously. Of course it had been him. Of course he hadn't told her. Of course she had known and not wanted to know. Her mother, eyes sharp under the softness, touched the printed strip of photos sitting on the table. Milagros come in strange wrappers, she said, voice gentle. Then, quietly, be careful not to make a man your miracle. Maya nodded, throat tight enough to strangle Grace. She wiped a smear of salsa from Sophie's chin, not seeing her own hand. She heard herself say, I need to take a walk. Mateo's face shifted. You want me to come? No, the word was too quick. She softened it. Stay. Be celebrated. I'm just 10 minutes. She looked at her mother. Watch her. Her mother's look said, You're a grown woman and my baby go. Maya pushed through family and steam and laughter, into a street that smelled like rain and tortillas and the metallic tang of a day that had changed shape without asking permission. On the south lawn, the grass befriended puddles. A maple's wet leaves clicked softly. Ethan stood as Paige approached, every line in his body an apology waiting for its cue. She came with shoulders squared and a face trained in neutrality. She was beautiful in the way honesty is beautiful. Unpolished, illuminating. Hi, he said. The word left him stripped of its usual equipment. You look. Don't, she said, gentle and immediate. Let's try this without scripts. He nodded. His hands wanted to make shapes in the air. He jammed them into his pockets like unruly children. I asked for not today, she said, breath steady, eyes steady, mercy thin. And then I saw this. She turned her screen toward him. The same photo. The caption. The comments. It took 10 minutes. I told her no, he said. The defense was impulse, breath. The reporter. In the concourse. I told her not today. That's what you always say, Paige replied, so soft his name cracked inside his chest. You tell people no and then make a bigger yes somewhere else, and my day gets dragged under it. Intent doesn't save impact. Her mouth quirked in a way he recognized from 6-year-old pancakes. You promised I won't make it about me. Have you ever seen yourself not make it about you? Even your jacket has a headline. He swallowed. Rain scented the air like a memory of mornings. I was sitting in a chair, he said, a weak joke that confessed too much. That's the point, she said, the anger arriving like a voltage through careful language. You sit in a chair and it becomes a stage and you don't even have to stand. You could have stayed home. I'm trying, he said, to be here without doing that. And I'm trying to have a graduation without worrying about what face I have to make so photo captions can't use me to sell your growth, she said. The harshness cut not because it was cruel, but because it was exact. I'm happy you're trying. Try somewhere I'm not. He opened his mouth. He closed it, once, twice, like a fish that keeps misreading the water. Her phone buzzed. She didn't look. She slid it into her pocket like putting away a weapon. I'm going to take photos with my friends, she said. We're going to be poor and loud and brilliant and not in your newsletter. I'd like to text you tomorrow when I'm not feral about optics. But right now. She tapped her chest twice, heart, like Mateo had, and the gesture almost broke him open. Please don't. Not today. He nodded because he had no argument left that didn't ask her to hold his damage along with hers. The nod felt like a vow to take his own pain home and not make her mop for it. She turned, steps quick, the white tassel at her shoulder a small flag of a nation he was not allowed to colonize. He watched until she was absorbed by a cluster of robes and joy. Mr. Mercer, a voice said in the space she left. Kendra. He didn't turn. She came in from the side, phone down, voice lower than it had been under the awning. Off the record? Say the word and I'll pull the photo. He looked at her, surprise breaking through the tightness. You would. I'm a person sometimes, she said. We all are. She tilted her head. You do break rooms by being in them. I know, he said. She nodded toward the sidewalk. You've got another storm. Maya was walking toward him, head high, mouth a line that suggested she'd sanded it herself. The cardigan had a grease spot from a taco like a medal. Her hair had come further loose. The pencil clung on, as if refusing to give up. Her eyes, those had gone dark. Is that your reporter friend? She asked, no hesitation, no softness. Acquaintance, he said. Enemy, Kendra said cheerfully. Sometimes penitent. Can you give us a minute? Maya asked her. There was zero intimidation in it. There was a request dressed as a command because she had 100 other things to do, and this wasn't one, and yet it was because life was unkind that way. Kendra moved. Sure. For the record, I'll take it down. Don't do me favors, Maya said without looking at her. Just stop using women's faces to sell men's better days. Kendra winced. Working on it. She disappeared like a sensible animal into a hedge. Maya stopped a few feet from Ethan. No hugging the air between them. No laugh to pad the drop. Is your foundation opening doors? She asked. Yes, he said. Did you give my son $500 last year? Her voice was quiet. Thunder wasn't there to dramatize it, so it dramatized itself. I approved it, he said. He had never meant the 4 words to be a wound. She absorbed them, the way a strong branch absorbs wind until it snaps. You sat there today, her hand flashed toward the stadium as if it were still there, and listened to me tell that story like it was a story you didn't know. You watched me be proud of asking. You watched me say it saved us. You watched me hand you dignity, and you didn't think to hand me the truth back. I didn't want to turn your life into a receipt, he said. It was anonymous for a reason. I wanted you to keep the shape of your win. I didn't want to collapse it into mine. You didn't want me to be mad at you, she translated, and there it was, the thing he couldn't say. He flinched. That too. A bicycle clinked over the sidewalk joints behind them. Small noises polite in the face of a larger one. I didn't choose to be in a picture with your name, she said, lifting the phone without lifting her gaze. My daughter didn't. Strangers are talking about us like we're a subplot. You're very kind in person, Ethan. You're good at bringing jackets and buying pretzels and not making a show of it. But your gravity bends things whether you're humble or not. It pulls women like me into headlines we didn't audition for. I asked her not to run it, he said. She said she'd take it down. After? Maya's smile hurt to look at. It was made of too many unslept nights. After is when the worst parts always happen. You didn't bring the storm, but you're used to scheduling the cleanup crew. He swallowed. Tell me what to do. Stop putting me in a position where I have to tell you, she said. No venom, just a bone-deep weariness. We didn't need saving today. We needed to be left alone to be happy without being a story. I wasn't trying to save you, he said, and then, too late, realized how that sounded. Like he wanted credit for not doing a thing he shouldn't have been doing in the first place. Shame flashed, ugly and hot. I wanted. He flailed for a small, honest word and found none that didn't make him sound like a man asking for cookies for not eating anyone's cookies. What did you want? She asked, knife clean. Coffee. A woman to make you feel like you could try again at being a father without having to face the first person you hurt. A photo to hold because the ones you have are old and a little blurry and easier than new ones. He took the blow and didn't defend. Yes, he said. All of it. Something released in her eyes. Not forgiveness, not yet. Recognition. Anger has trouble stabbing when the target agrees with the blade. I liked you, she said, voice thinning. I liked how my kid looked at you. I liked liking you. For 10 minutes I let myself imagine moderate gestures. Another coffee. Flashcards. She laughed, painful. Then I look up, and I'm in a caption, and the guy who says yes to doors said no to telling me the one thing that would have given me a choice. I was afraid you'd walk away, he said. You didn't give me the chance to prove you wrong, she said. That's not love, even in the unexpected, tiny, maybe form it was beginning to be. That's control disguised as kindness. He flinched again, it fit. You're right. She blinked hard once. No tears came. She had places to be where tears were expensive. Please don't text me. Not today. The line he had heard twice now, December cold in June. Give me a day to not be anyone's object lesson. He nodded. Okay. And delete the photo from your feed if you put it there, she said, and when he shook his head too fast, she nodded back once. Good. They stood. A long breath. The lawn insofar as it was south had become a compass that couldn't point anywhere. The maple above them shook its leaves like a man shaking off a coat he didn't put on. I'm sorry, he said. It was a big, unshapely apology wearing too many coats. Me too, she said. Because the thing in the concourse felt real. It was, he said. That makes this worse. It does, she said. She looked over his shoulder at a flock of graduates draped over each other in a way that would, in a decade, make them cry. I have to go back to my son. He's about to be caught by aunties. He needs a mother who isn't standing on a lawn picking glass out of her feet. I understand, he said. She hesitated. I don't hate you, she said, which might have been the cruelest kindness of the day. I'm just tired of being content. It's exhausting trying to keep lily pollen off your face when you're holding the bouquet and people keep sneezing. He nodded. A broken, dumb nod. He wanted to say he would hold the bouquet and let the pollen mark him instead. He wanted to say a lot of things he had not earned the right to say. She turned and walked away, the pencil in her hair finally dropping and rolling toward the grass. He stooped and picked it up without thinking, a reflex that hurt him. He didn't call after her. He didn't pocket the pencil like a talisman. He set it on the bench, the ordinary wood made sacred by the objects people leave when they decide to carry less. He sank back onto the bench. The maple shed a fat drop that landed on the back of his neck. He didn't move. In the distance, the stadium's PA announced something cheerful and forgettable. His phone, trader, and lifeline vibrated. He looked. PR, we can get ahead of this. If we identify the woman and child as local mother and scholarship recipient family, we can control the narrative. Ethan stared until the words lost shape. He typed back, each letter a nail, no. Do not contact them. No statement. No photo. Then slower, if anything runs, it will say, he is a father at a graduation. Leave him alone. He set the phone face down. He picked up the printed photo strip, Maya and Sophie and Mateo in a captured joy that lens couldn't cheapen, and held it like a little raft for a second. Then he slid it into his wallet where the battered photo of a pancake mustache already lived. People were laughing on a hill. A dog chased a thrown mortarboard as if the future were something you could fetch and return. Ethan sat with the ruined silence and the knowledge that he had told the truth too late, and not enough. He felt, with a terrible clarity, the empty chair beside him. The one from this morning, the one he had filled and then emptied again by being himself in the only ways he knew how. For the first time in a long time, he didn't try to strategize the next move, or script the apology, or make a plan. He let the failure sit in him. He let it take up a seat he would not fill with a microphone. He breathed. Somewhere, across a few tree-lined blocks, a woman he'd met under a storm held a taco in one hand and her daughter's hair in the other and laughed anyway. Somewhere closer, his own daughter pressed her head against a friend's shoulder and muttered, "He's trying," in a tone that both forgave and didn't. And here, under the maple that smelled like a wet page in a book he was still learning to read, he looked up and whispered to nobody. Not today. and meant he would not make any of this about him. He hoped, wildly, stupidly, that maybe tomorrow, if he learned to sit in a chair and keep the world off it, someone might ask to sit next to him again. He would say yes, clean. Or he would say nothing and make room. He would not be a headline, not if he could help it. He would try to be a person who keeps jackets dry and tells the whole truth faster. And for now, he folded himself small and waited to hurt. Night slid in with a hush that felt like the stadium finally exhaled. The city glittered under a light drizzle, windows stitched in gold across Ethan's high-rise like a quilt he didn't know how to crawl under. He set his keys in the dish by the door. The jacket he'd used as a small island in a storm went over a chair. It smelled faintly of rain and lilies now, a clean, green ache that followed him into the kitchen like a memory you don't put away because it's the only thing in the room that's warm. He didn't turn on music. The quiet needed to be heard. His phone chimed, the kind of sound that had run his life for 20 years. He glanced out of reflex and flinched at the flood of alerts still surfacing from the afternoon. Blog posts, mentions, a dozen offers from PR to control narrative. He thumbed them away, one by one, like shutting windows in a sudden storm. He dialed a number he didn't save. Kendra. She picked up on the second ring. Mercer. You said you'd take it down. He kept his voice low, not because of courtesy, for once because of shame. It's down, she said. No edge. Just tired. I told my editor it was a bad call. We're retracting the caption and posting a note. Don't post a note, he said. No more oxygen. Just let it die. A beat. That's not how it works. I know. I'm sorry, she added, not sure whether she was apologizing for the post, the industry, or the fact that she'd recognized before he had that his gravity bent strangers without his permission. And for what it's worth, you didn't pose. For what it's worth, he said. A man like me doesn't have to. He ended the call kindly because someone had to. He opened a new email. Subject, opening doors, structural changes. He typed like a man rewiring his own house. No more donor spotlights. No gala speeches using recipients' faces. All emergency grants will become campus-administered in perpetuity, my name removed. If my presence blocks the door, then I belong behind it. Effective immediately. He hit send before he could edit the sentences into something more palatable. He wanted ugly clarity. He wanted to feel the cost. He poured water into a glass and drank half of it, because that's what you do when your hands need a job. Then he set the glass down and opened the Notes app, where he had always written speeches that sounded good and meant less than they should. He stared at the blank page. He typed page. Then stopped. If I were a better man, I would have been a quiet father. I was loud and called it love. I thought showing up with a camera was showing up. You asked for not today. I'm trying to learn that not today is a sentence, not an invitation to negotiate. He read the words. He deleted half of them. He left the first line and the last two. He closed the app without saving. He would not arrive at her tomorrow with a message rehearsed to death. He walked to the hall, and the photos he kept where only he could see them. Few and chosen. A 9-year-old with a pancake mustache. A little girl with a paper crown in a pizza place, eyes luminous with absolute belief. He touched the glass like a man giving benediction to a past self he was done forgiving. The pencil he'd picked up from the grass, Maya's pencil, sat on the counter where he'd laid it like an accusation he hadn't earned the right to keep. He rolled it between his fingers. He could feel the worn spots where she'd gripped it through bills and grocery lists and the small poems necessary to live. He put the pencil in the bowl by the keys and said to the room, "Not today," meaning, "I won't make your life a symbol in mine." He texted PR. No statements, no identifications, no outreach to any mystery woman. Pull back from all cameras. If asked, say, "I was a father at a graduation." Leave families alone. A beat later. Also, if anyone on the team leaks photos of attendees today, they're fired. We're done using people to sell our virtue. He dropped the phone on the counter. His fingers trembled once. He let them. In the apartment across town, onions hissed in a pan because Maya's mother cooked when thinking got loud. The small space smelled like cumin and wet shoes and lilies salvaged into a jar that didn't deserve them. Family had thinned to the ones who cleaned, which is to say, the ones who loved by wiping. Sophie snored on the fold-out, one arm thrown over her forehead like a heroine. Mateo sat cross-legged on the floor with a paper plate and 2 tacos that leaned into each other like tired siblings. The TV murmured a cooking show to no one. Alma sprawled on the rug. They took it down, she said to the ceiling. Metro News. It's gone. It's not gone, Maya said, rinsing a glass. Screenshots are forever. She turned the faucet off and listened to the heavy landing of silence when a house stops being busy. He asked for it to come down, she added, because fairness is a muscle and she wanted hers to stay strong. Her mother wiped the counter with her slow, precise rhythm. I told you not to make a man your miracle, she said. I did not tell you to make him your villain. There's so much in between. Maya dried her hands on a towel with sunflowers printed half off the edge like hope. He didn't tell me about the grant, she said. He watched me hand in my gratitude like an egg I'd kept warm, and he didn't tell me it was already stamped with his name. He watched you be proud of yourself, her mother said, a correction so gentle it almost didn't cut. Maybe he thought that was safer than you being grateful to him. He was afraid I'd walk, Maya said. Would you have? Her mother asked. She thought of the concourse, of the pretzels, of moderate gestures and a jacket turning into shelter and a laugh that felt like a sampler of something she didn't have words for yet. She thought of the way she had recognized him by the shape of his regret before the shape of his jaw. She thought of the caption and the comments and the sudden feeling that her life had been pulled like a rug under a furniture dolly. I don't know, she said, honest tired. Today I did. Mateo put his plate aside. Ma, he said, careful like a man coming into a room with a candle. It's okay if he's both. The guy who helped and the guy who made it about him sometimes. You always say people carry more than one truth. I say too many wise things, she muttered, and her mouth tipped into a smile because her son had inherited her stubborn, and it looked beautiful on him tonight. She checked her phone. No messages from Ethan. Relief rolled through her and left a tidal pool of disappointment she didn't trust. She scrolled. Found a screenshot someone had sent with a caption she hadn't seen yet. Statement from Mercer. I was a father at a graduation. Leave families alone. No mention of her. No tag. She put the phone down. She picked it up. She typed a text and erased it twice. She left her phone screen dark on the table and went to tuck Sophie's arm under the blanket, the way you tuck a child back into the shape of safety. On the coffee table, the printed photo strip glowed a little under the lamp. She caught Mateo looking at it as if it were proof of something he was afraid to name. What are you thinking? She asked, because letting him practice saying it out loud now might save him years of silence later. I'm thinking. He dragged a hand through his messed hair. My emergency grant was because of him. And also because of me, because I asked and because you made me. And I'm thinking I don't want my degree to sit under his shadow or his halo. I want it to sit on my wall next to a photo of us where we are ridiculous. She reached, squeezed his knee. Then that's what we do. They fell quiet. The onions turned translucent just because that's how onions are. The clock on the stove rolled over to a number that felt like an inside joke. Maya's phone buzzed. Her stomach fluttered, traitor, before she even looked. It wasn't him. It was Alma, from the other end of the couch. A text anyway. If he texts you tomorrow, are you going to answer? Maya typed back without lying. I don't know. She hovered. Added maybe. In her studio apartment that smelled like new books and the detergent they could afford, Paige sat cross-legged on her bed with her robe folded on the chair like a person she didn't want to be mad at anymore. Her friends had finally left her to her own breathing. She'd washed her face. She'd stared at the girl in the mirror and tried to reconcile her with the kid in the grainy pancake photo in her father's wallet. She couldn't. Not all the way. But she didn't need to tonight. Her phone lay on the comforter. The notification from Metro News, removed. The screenshot in her group chat. Of course it's screenshotted. The text from a friend, you okay? She'd answered with a heart and a skull because irony was easier than explanation. She opened her father's last message. I'm here. I'll wait. I won't make it about me. For a man whose sentences usually took the scenic route, it was a spare construction. She could see the architecture of him in it, trying to put away his scaffolding and stand there without anything to hold on to. She typed, pancakes at Lula's? 9 a.m.? No syrup. She stared at the words long enough to feel their edges. She backspaced no syrup, then retyped it. It was meaner and kinder than anything else she could think to say. Her thumb hovered. Years of learned withholding made her hand heavy. She sent it. Across the city, Ethan's phone lit the kitchen's quiet like a small, sensible dawn. He looked down. Read the 3 sentences. Laughed, breathless and absurd with relief. His body did an old, stupid thing. He started to write too much. Thank you. He stopped. He erased. He typed, "I'll be there." And then, after a second that made his heart beat in his throat, "I love pancakes with too many chocolate chips. I'll order mine dry." A bubble, then stillness. He put the phone face up on the counter and didn't pace. He rested both palms on the cool surface, and in the crystalline quiet of a night that had already asked enough, he allowed himself to imagine the scrape of fork against plate, the precise way she would tap the table when she was nervous, the absolute, ordinary miracle of sitting and not being a headline. He picked up the pencil again. He typed a new draft in notes with Maya's name at the top. He kept it exactly one sentence long. "If you'll let me, I'd like to apologize in person tomorrow. 5 minutes, public place, your choice. If not, I won't reach out again." He didn't send it. Not today. He set an alarm for noon so he wouldn't default to avoidance when the day got loud. He turned off lights one by one like putting a house to bed. In the dark, his jacket hummed its green lily after scent. He lay down in a room that had learned to be quiet around him and listened to the city breathe. He wasn't fixed. He wasn't ruined. He was choosing. Morning found him before the alarm. He woke to a city made clean by rain, to a kitchen that still remembered lilies, to a pencil waiting by the keys like a small wooden promise to say less and mean more. He showered. He didn't shave because the man in the concourse hadn't been a boardroom. He put on a plain shirt and a jacket that smelled like yesterday's kindness and not like power. He left early because people who have spent years making others wait need to learn how to be on time. 3 blocks away, Maya woke to Sophie's braid having undone itself into a halo and her mother making coffee that tasted like conversation. She checked her phone. The city had not ended. The post was still down. Nothing new from Ethan. Good. She put her phone face down and made breakfast she'd never quite let herself call luxury. Then, halfway through the cup, she turned the phone over and wrote the sentence it had taken her until dawn to shape. "Tomorrow, maybe we can talk. 5 minutes. In the park by the clinic. Noon. If you can't, okay." She didn't hit send. She tucked the phone into her sweater pocket and told herself she'd decide after the second cup, after Sophie's hair, after the bus, after choosing a life that wasn't waiting on any man. The choice kept thrumming, missing a beat, returning. At 8:56, a man who had built towers and learned nothing from them sat on a metal stool at Lula's Pancakes and ordered 2 waters and waited without touching either. He watched the door like a penitent and did not rehearse. He heard, somewhere far off and strange, the sound of a child's shoes lighting up with each hop. It was a memory, a blessing, or both. He chose, again and again in the space of 4 minutes. Not to make a speech, not to cry, not to make pancakes into penance. He chose to be exactly what she had asked him to be for the length of a breakfast, present and not about him. The bell over the door jingled at 9 o'clock. Paige walked in with her hair in a ponytail and the face she wore when she didn't want a world to know it mattered. She saw him. She looked at the empty stool beside him. He didn't say sit. He slid the laminated menu over and left room on the counter for her elbows. She looked at the counter. Then at him. Then down at his hands, still. She exhaled. She sat. "Hi," she said. "Hi," he said. He didn't reach. He didn't explain. He didn't even say pancake. He let the griddle do the talking, let the smell of butter and heat make a bridge smaller and sturdier than anything he'd ever built with money. He waited for her to order first. He waited for his own mouth to learn that its best work, sometimes, was quiet. Somewhere across town, noon rolled closer by 1 minute. A woman checked her phone, then put it back in her pocket. She braided her daughter's hair with the muscle memory of love. She didn't know which yes she would choose yet. She knew it would be hers. The day held its breath, not in dread, but in the particular hope that arrives when people choose the smaller, truer thing over the grand. The choice wasn't loud. It didn't light up headlines. It was a stool at a diner and a text not sent, and the possibility of a park bench later, where 2 people might try to choose each other with 5 minutes and a pencil's worth of words. Lula's smelled like butter and heat, and the faint citrus of dish soaped the way every trustworthy diner does. The griddle hissed. The bell over the door did its little silver cough, and Paige slid onto the stool beside Ethan, as if the seat needed to learn a new way to hold this. She didn't look at him right away. She looked at the menu, which was laminated and sticky around the edges, and said, "Pancakes, no syrup." The waitress nodded like she'd been expecting those words all morning. Ethan folded his hands on the counter. He could see his reflection in the chrome of the milkshake mixer. He looked like a man who had slept and also not slept. "Me too," he said. "No syrup." He allowed himself the smallest smile. Too many chocolate chips. Obviously, she said, and their eyes met and didn't fight. Obviously, she said, and their eyes met and didn't fight. The waitress set 2 waters down with a clink and a kindness. Outside, a bus sighed at the curb. Inside, plates landed, forks sang. Someone in a booth laughed in the key of relief because a toddler had finally stopped screaming. I owe you, he began. No speeches, she said gently, not unkind. No speeches, he agreed. But an apology. Short. He felt the edge of panic in his chest, then held it still. I turned you into a story. I'm sorry. I won't do that again. If I do, you won't see me. She cut a pat of butter in half, then in half again, the blade of her knife steady. She looked at him, head tilted the way she did when she was deciding whether to keep something. It's not even the cameras, she said. It's the way you tell yourself that love needs an audience to count. I know, he said. I don't want that anymore. She nodded once. The pancakes arrived, ridiculous, perfect, a little scorched at the edges. She inhaled. He did too. They ate like people who knew how to be grateful for a mouthful. I have boundaries, she said around the second bite, because love is not the only thing that needs a plate. No press. No posts. No showing up unannounced anywhere I'm trying to be my own person. Saturdays are mine. If you want to see me, you ask. If I say no, it's a full sentence. Okay, he said. Yes. He took a breath. Can I ask one thing? You can ask, she said, keeping her fork moving, staying ahead of the conversation like a person who had learned to first think, then speak. When we're here, he said, can I sit next to you? She glanced at him, quick, surprised, not at the question, but at its smallness. She tapped her fingers twice on the counter, not quite the heart, her code revising itself in real time. Today, she said. Yes. They ate. He didn't perform. She didn't test. They let the griddle's steadying sound be the third voice in the conversation. When the check came, he slid his card without a flourish. No tip wars, she said. He laughed, put cash down. She put $1 on top like a flag and didn't give a speech about fairness. Outside, they stood in air that still remembered rain. Text me when you're home, she said, then rolled her eyes at herself. I know. I'm my mother. I will, he said. Do you? He gestured vaguely, a man learning the choreography of enough. Do you want a ride? No, she said. I'm walking. It's better for my head. A beat. I'm not promising anything beyond pancakes. Pancakes are a miracle, he said. Her mouth quirked. She lifted her hand. He didn't move to hug. She touched her own heart twice, the way Mateo had, and then turned toward a day that belonged to her. He watched until the corner took her. He didn't follow. At 11:58, he sat on a bench in the little park by the clinic where the swing set squeaked like friendship and the grass wore yesterday's rain in its hair. He had brought nothing but the pencil, warm from his palm, smudged with a tiny crescent of graphite where someone had worried it through bad news and good. Maya came at 12:03, on time by the clock of a person whose life had taught her the cost of waiting. She wore the same cardigan, minus the grease spot, a new top that said she'd chosen herself this morning, even for 5 minutes. Her eyes were clear, not cold. You kept it, she said, eyeing the pencil. I didn't want to keep anything of yours without asking, he said, holding it out like a white flag that had learned to write. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the grant. I was afraid you'd walk. You had the right to walk before I tried to herd you where I wanted you. I was wrong. She took the pencil, turned it once, then slid it into her bun with muscle memory that made his chest ache. Thank you for saying the part where you were wrong, she said. You'd be amazed how many men miss that step. I'm trying to stop missing steps, he said. I also, he exhaled. I changed the program. No more faces in the newsletter. No more gala spotlights with students as decoration. Emergency grants will go through the schools without my name on them. I'm not telling you to impress you. I'm telling you because I used your life to teach me something, and the least I can do is do the thing and not ask you to clap. She listened. A breeze slid past, lifting the baby hairs at her temple. Children laughed in the distance, a sound so ordinary and holy it could bless any confession. That helps, she said. Not because it makes you good. Because it makes fewer people have to be brave in public when what they need is groceries. I want to be useful, he said, the old weakness reshaped. Be present, she said. Useful grows from that. She sat, one hip on the bench, leaving space. 5 minutes, she reminded them both, and then smiled like who were they kidding. Time was a rubber band when you were honest. You make good coffee. You make better silence. That's rare. He laughed, surprised by her generosity and steadied by her limits. I like your not lilies, he said, nodding to the jar on the clinic windowsill near the park fence, where someone had stuck 3 dandelions so proudly they looked like a designer had placed them there. Sturdy. I like moderate, she countered. I like choosing without needing to turn everything into proof. Proof, he echoed. He reached into his pocket and took out the tiny print strip, Maya, Sophie, Matteo. He turned it over. May I? He asked, nodding toward her pencil. She nodded. He handed both over. She drew a small star on the back, 5-pointed and sure. There, she said. Certainty. She held the strip up to the light. Can I be honest? Please, he said, and the word felt like letting air into a house that had been shut too long. I'm still mad, she said. And I still like you. The smile that followed had edges and warmth both. You don't get to fix my life. You can bring jackets and ask how my midterms are, and let my daughter take your glow stick and not put us in a caption. You can sit next to me and not need to be in charge of the bench. I can do that, he said, and let the want in his voice be audible without swallowing the point. Footsteps pattered. A voice rang across the grass. Ma! Sophie ran at them with the wind at her back and a braid that had once again escaped its own enthusiasm. Maya stood to catch her mid-flight, spinning her once because the day was finally light enough to do that. Sophie landed, bright and exact. She spotted Ethan, grinned. You again, she said, as if he were a favorite song on the radio. She pointed at the bench with solemn ceremony. Can we sit next to you? The echo hit him like a laugh and a benediction. He didn't ruin it with a speech. He just moved over, made space with his whole body, and said, please. They sat, 3 in a row, knees not touching and not needing to. A breeze carried the smell of cut grass and something frying 3 blocks away. A dog nosed a soccer ball with worldly focus. Sophie swung her legs and narrated clouds. Maya tucked one leg under, leaned back, allowed herself to lay her palm for a moment on the bench between them like proof. He took out his phone, turned it so they could all see, and, without fanfare, snapped a photo of their knees and the wood and the pencil peeking from her hair. For later, he said, when we forget to remember that this is the point. She didn't say thank you. She didn't have to. He slipped the phone away face down and left it. It didn't become a montage right there on the bench. Life is too stubborn for that. But the next weeks braided themselves the way new things do when you tend them. Saturday's Lula's. He and Paige sat side by side, arguing amiably about the proper ratio of chocolate to batter, about how much space a person owes their past. He didn't post. He didn't pose. He learned to order first only if she asked him to listen for the subtle click of her jaw that meant enough. He met 2 of her friends and didn't try to impress them. He asked one about her grad program and meant it. When he left, he texted, home. Thank you. Not a demand, a report. Wednesdays, the park by the clinic when Maya's shifts allowed. He quizzed her with flashcards she made. The words he could barely pronounce turning into a kind of music when she laughed at his earnest failures. He learned the difference between empathy and triage. He brought no lilies and occasionally churros, and the jacket sat between them when the wind had ideas. Sophie always asked, can we sit next to you? As if the bench needed reminding. He always said yes. Sometimes he said, please, and meant it in more languages than he spoke. Once, after a particularly long day, Maya showed up with hair down and eyes glassy. Tell me one small miracle, she said, dropping into the seat like the Secretary of Miracles had extended office hours. He told her about Paige's no-syrup law being a metaphor for boundaries. She told him about a patient who had finally gotten their insulin approved. They high-fived like middle schoolers because there are not enough rituals for quotidian wins. He told no one he was in love. He didn't know the day it became true. He only knew that when his phone buzzed, it was less likely to be a headline and more likely to be a star drawn on a photo, a text that said, quiz me on pharmacology at 6. A 9-year-old sending a voice memo whispering, we saw a frog. A 9 a.m. with pancakes and silence that counted as speech. He had built empires. Now he built mornings. Late in June, after the air learned how to be warm without pressing, after Paige texted him a photo of a pancake made in the shape of a heart with the caption stop. And he did, after Maya held up an exam with a grade circled in red so high he wanted to frame it and didn't. He found himself back at the stadium for another ceremony, this one a nursing school's pinning he's not yet invited to. He sat in the back because that's where you learn the most. The chair beside him was not empty for long. Maya slid into it, hair pinned with the pencil like a flag planted on new land. Sophie climbed onto her lap, older by a summer's worth of jumps. Paige came down the aisle 5 minutes later with a paper cup from Lula's and raised it like a toast without being a spectacle. He didn't say a word. He tapped his heart twice. 3 hands returned the signal, each in their own time. The lights dimmed. Applause rose for other people's children. He looked at the people beside him and did the simplest, bravest thing he'd learned all year. He stayed. What small, moderate gesture do you think changes a life more than a grand gesture ever could? If it were you, who would you choose to sit next to today? And what boundary or promise would you honor to make it real? Share your take in the comments. Your story might be the proof someone else needs.